some crime need and should be sentenced with the death penalty. Entahlah, sakit hati juga kalau tengok penjenayah kes berat, pasti hidup elok je dalam penjara. Another person says, keputusan yang sangat bodoh. Penjara seumur hidup dan sepanjang hayat akan gunakan duit cukai untuk makan dan minum banduan. Kalau gantung sampai mati, duit cukai pun tak membazir. I would say the right to life is absolute and sacred for all. And the reason we react to someone killing a person is because we know it's an absolute right to life. We cannot use the same criminal logic of that person to tell the state to kill that person. So today we are talking about the abolishment of the mandatory death penalty. I am Jerald Joseph, a human rights expert, and this is my expert opinion. The proposal was to move to taking away the mandatory death penalty. I think maybe it's a softer landing for our society to move in that direction rather than straight away say no death penalty. Already there's reaction now from many people who feel like, we still need it. So the death penalty will still be in our law books, but then I think doesn't mean that's the first thing you want to hold. I would think the judge would look at all the possibilities, and that is the framework for discretion. So you will actually free the hands of the judges to actually go deeper, and I don't think judges will absolve themselves and start releasing people out. It's not going to happen. If you're convicted of a crime, it's the judge's duty to find the sentence that fits the crime. I know it's hard to defend the right to life when the crime is so severe. Murder, rape, drug trafficking, all the bad things. It's hard to defend, but the right to life is still life. And the second part is, as good as we are, as we try to be in the criminal justice system, it's fallible, it's human, and at that point of time, you think you're certain of the crime or the criminality, and judgment is pronounced. But we know in Malaysia and many other places, after some time you say, oops, he didn't deserve to die because the court found that there was not compelling evidence. But the problem is, in death penalty, there is no U-turn. You cannot say sorry. You can say sorry to the family members, but to that person has no chance to live that life out again. Other penalties, yeah, sorry, you can still live out your life.
This is an abolishment of the mandatory death penalty. It's not an abolishment of the death penalty. What happens essentially is that it gives courts the discretion as to whether to sentence someone to death or to maybe give them a life imprisonment. We have already seen this happen in our country a few years ago. That amendment was incorporated in the Dangerous Drugs Act. That discretion isn't really widely applicable. And the reason for that is that before a judge can choose to depart from the death penalty, certain criteria have to be met. The accused person has to show, for example, that he assisted law enforcement agencies. And what do you do if you do provide those details to law enforcement officers, but they don't do anything about it? So then whose fault will that be? You've done what you can, but they did not take it further. So all of these things will add up against the accused and against the judge's discretion. We also don't know how it is to be applied. For example, does it have retrospective effect? What happens to those who are currently on death row, those who have already finished all their appellate levels, Court of Appeal, Federal Court? What happens to them? So there's a lot that still requires clarity. So I do hope that moving forward, there's going to be a practical effect of removing the mandatory death penalty, and the judge's hands are not going to be so tied so that we do see a move away from the death penalty. You may have also realized that a lot of families of the victims have come up in response to the ministry's suggestion recently. And I think it's very natural and it's understandable for families to react that way. But I also think that the courts have to take an objective position. While being aware of all the sensitivities, we must understand that the policy behind sentencing cannot be about revenge. It has to be about rehabilitation or retribution or deterrence, but we know that it doesn't play a part as a deterrent at all. So revenge cannot be the reason behind the policy. So what works? Executing someone? Is it quicker to just get it over and done with, or keep them alive and use the taxpayers' money to pay for it? That is another argument against abolishment. But if you look at it, especially for our country, when the numbers are so small, they're so insignificant anyway, keeping them alive is really not going to add that much to cost. So maybe we look at the causes for these crimes in the first place. The economic conditions, educational conditions. So all of that has to be dealt with in order for the society to recover, as opposed to just isolating one problem at a time and sending him to death row, thinking that that's really going to have an effect on reducing crime at the community at large. And it does not correlate.
Maybe we are too fixed on the final outcome of the criminal justice system. So always look at the sentence as the answer. So if it's more severe, yeah, we've got it done. But the point is, if the crime keeps happening, if the severity increases, if the number increases, then we are not addressing society. Our community, why are we going in that direction? Maybe we should be a little bit more informed society and involved society, and not leave it in the hands of the police and the parliamentarians and the politicians to manage the country. I think if we are more involved, we'll ask the right questions, but also we will learn to be a bit more responsible in finding solutions that work out better for all. That should be our priority in society.